Hey loves, it's Britt, and in this video I'm talking about Saturn square the Ascendant in Synastry. So this does tend to be a significant Synastry aspect where the Saturn person does help the ascendant person in structuring their life, usually in an important area. So, usually, when Saturn is square the ascendant, the Saturn person's Saturn will be in either the fourth or the 10th house of the ascendant person. Now, I'll do those videos separately when I go through the whole wheel and do Saturn and the house overlays, but usually, depending on what house system you're going to use, Saturn will be there. But regardless, we're going to just talk about the aspect today of Saturn square to the ascendant. So, the Saturn person can definitely feel like the ascendant person's expression warrants some judgment from them on their part. Now, whether they actually overtly say that to the ascendant person, probably more likely if their Saturn is in the upper part of the chart, so in the 10th, they're going to be more overtly judgy towards the ascendant person. But regardless of where it is, the ascendant person can really feel like the Saturn person is like a parental figure and a somewhat judging one. Like, where, and they don't mean to be that way, but it's just when they see the ascendant person acting so freely and so like primitively in a way, like they can really see the ascendant person as like, and they can actually respect them a lot too, because they see in them this like freedom of expression, this like exuberance, this even like naive kind of energy, and like just a very authentic, like primal expression they see in the ascendant person. And it can make the Saturn person, it depends on their Saturn sign, really, like what it's going to do to them, what it's going to trigger. But it can definitely be triggering to the Saturn person, where it can make the Saturn person feel aged or old, or if they're not older, like they can make them feel like just kind of restricted and uncomfortable, and like oh, you're acting like that, like maybe like don't say that so loud, or like, it's a very interesting not overly, it's a very interesting aspect where the Saturn person on the one hand is like respects the way that they act and is like, oh my god, I wish I could be that authentic, but then at the same time they're like, oh my god, we're in public, like that's embarrassing, especially if Saturn's coming from the 10th house. Or yeah, they're just kind of like, I don't know him, or I don't know her. And then the ascendant person can really feel like it's an inhibiting response to get from someone, where you can feel like they're a little bit embarrassed of you and the way that you act, right? And it depends also a lot on the signs that this square is taking place in, but the ascendant person can get pretty offended and feel like, you know what, like, who are you to judge me, Saturn? Like, you're not my parent. Or maybe if this isn't a parent-child synastry, it does actually make a lot of sense. Like, it sort of fits the role, especially if Saturn is the parent, right? Because the Saturn person acts very parental towards the ascendant person, and the ascendant person may like that or may not like that. It depends how much they respect the Saturn person, and like the relationship, like what kind of relationship is this, right? But the Saturn person will be giving a lot of advice, and related to the house that Saturn is falling in, it really can have a grounding influence on the ascendant person, and it can actually be quite needed. It can be very favorable for bringing wholeness into the ascendant person, because our ascendant, we can overly identify with it. It's such a big response to life. It's so primal. It's so like natural that we actually aren't even thinking about it, right? We just are it, right? And so when someone's Saturn is squaring it, it can be inhibiting, but it can also really make us take a step back and be like, maybe I should be more careful how I act, or maybe I should be more cautious, or, think before I act, or, it can definitely get you in a sort of like reflective mode when you have someone's Saturn square your ascendant. And then usually the advice that they're giving you, like if you do respect them, if you do want to listen, it can actually be helpful. But a lot of the times, the ascendant person will feel restricted and will become resentful and feel like, I'm not going to be judged by you, Saturn person. Like, just because you're all tight and you're tight ass and you're like just all, wound up and nervous and stressed, like, I'm not going to change the way that I act. Right. And so, um, you can kind of see that reaction sometimes coming out. And it does, a lot depends on the people involved, how the Saturn person uses their Saturn. Are they like a super judgy Saturn, or are they like a more chill Saturn? And also the ascendant person, like, are they open to Saturn's energy there? And yeah, it can be a more minor thing because, like I said about how usually Saturn is going to be in the 4th or the 10th house, the Saturn person is playing a significant role here in the ascendant person's life. And there is this energy of like a faded karmic contact. There is this energy that we're learning something from this and we got to stick it out, even if, we do feel a little bit judged sometimes. And the Saturn person, they really do, as much as like they can judge the ascendant person, they really do care about them. And like that's where the judgment comes from. It's almost like a fear of safety. Like they do have like a protective energy towards the ascendant person, and they, their advice or their energy when they get all triggered by the ascendant person, it's because they care about them. And if they don't care, this aspect probably isn't that active, like, because when this shows up in a relationship where, two people care about each other, the Saturn person is exerting like a parental, or it is like a care, even if it comes off cold or it comes off judgmental. It's coming from a caring place. And, because it is a square, the square is the aspect of like a frustrating kind of constant tension. There is a great potential for learning and growth. They can cover a lot of ground here. The Saturn person really gets a boost on their life lessons and their karma and their Saturn energy. And they get this opportunity to like all that repress, like if they've repressed their Saturn wound, if they've, not been dealing with their life lesson, and then the ascendant person comes into their life and just starts acting like themselves, like naturally, and then they just get all triggered, and it's like causes this like cataclysm, this like awakening to the Saturn wound and the Saturn energy, and they really can learn and grow a lot and become an even more effective Saturn, and even realize like a lot more about what they're really here to do as far as their Saturn goes. And then the ascendant person, like I said, can be grounded either in a 4th house area or whatever house the Saturn person is falling in. They're really gaining some structure in that area of life. And even though sometimes their self-expression, they might feel a little bit awkward, this aspect can actually show up in Synastry, where we're a little shy with each other, both ways. Like so there's some shyness, there's some like awkwardness, right? Because then all of a sudden the ascendant person feels like, oh, I'm being watched by this like parental role person, and like they can feel a little bit like, oh, like, am I acting right? Like, am I, are they gonna like me? And like it's it's very interesting. And then the Saturn person can feel a little bit nervous and anxious too, because it's like, oh, this person is just so free and open, like I said, and like it can make them feel like, oh, I'm kind of like, I don't feel that free as far as that expression goes. And so it's a really interesting one where they care about each other a lot. They sometimes don't know how to say it because they feel awkward. And the negatives are what I've mentioned, that the ascendant person can feel judged and the Saturn person can feel old, or kind of like they have to deal with their Saturn energy. It kind of gets brought up by the ascendant person, and definitely this one can feel like we're dealing with things and we're forced to deal with things when we have this square in Synastry, but it can end up working out to the benefit of the ascendant person, where they really get a much needed at times grounding from the Saturn individual who cares for them. And even though they don't always come off right, or they don't always come off in a loving way, they truly do like want to help them. And both grow a lot from this square. So squares to the ascendant, in my personal opinion, are never as bad or difficult as squares to the other planets, because like I said about the fourth 10th house connotation, right? So like you could have Saturn square the ascendant, but Saturn's conjunct the midheaven or conjunct the IC, and then so we're very much similar on those levels, when even though we're square to the ascendant. So it's just the self-expression that has the square, right? And so it's I think it's easier to deal with squares to the ascendant than squares to the other planets. So yeah, I'd love to know your experience of this aspect in Synastry. If you've had it, what was it like? Let me know in the comments. And also keep your requests coming. This was requested. Let me know any more requests that you have in the comments, you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk soon. Bye.